this up. And of course, everyone, thank you so much for coming out today and good afternoon. Welcome to Keeping Career Connections at Home Edition webinar series. My name is Michael Mazzano and I'm with Career Connection at Bow Valley College. And welcome to another interesting social distancing day. So we've been doing these webinars throughout April. And the whole goal of these things is really just to help you with your job search and to give you a little bit of that normalcy in life, and so that we can kind of all join together and learn from community leaders and organizations who have something to teach us about their areas of expertise. So of course, we're going to lay some ground rules out. Everyone's going to respect each other. I turned off everyone's microphones just in case so that we don't get any feedback. And then of course, we want you to join in, use that chat box, have fun. And then even if you want, especially during the Q&A session, even try to unmute your mic if you're brave enough and, jump in, ask some questions to Shane. So today, we call these days a crisis, and you can take, a crisis can take many, many kinds of different forms. So I'll give you a second here. Yeah, it can take lots of different forms, and it can affect you in lots of different areas. Like we've heard things like health crisis, a financial crisis, a midlife crisis, or in our case, maybe it might look like a career crisis. But how can you navigate those times in your career? Now, that might be you today. And if it is, let's take some notes. We've got a great person here today. We've got some help to help you if you're in that career crisis right now. Now, when there's trouble, who are you gonna call? Come on, Shane. You know this one.
When there's trouble, who you're going to call? There's a few things that come to my mind.
You can call lots of different people. Some might call the police, some might call Superman, but today, you know who we called? We called the Samurai. So Shane Fielder is the CEO of Samurai Innovation. He works with companies all over the world to bring corporate success. He's worked with organizations throughout doing organizational change. So he knows how to help people manage in a crisis. And he wants to bring that expertise to you. Now, I wasn't joking when this guy's a samurai. You're a 4th degree black belt in Aikido, isn't that right, Shane?
Yep, that's correct. I've been doing it this is my 26th year.
26th year, good for you, good for you. So you started when you were a baby then, huh?
Pretty much, yeah, right out of the womb.
All right, you've got lots of great experience, lots of great insight that you're gonna tell us about. So why don't I pass it over to you and let's do this.
Sure. Let me just make sure I get the screen shared here. And I got to get the screen shared. Michael, let's get that going. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Kim. Judy, awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks, Michael, for the introduction. It's really great to be here. I've had a lot of affinity with Bow Valley College over the years. I've worked with the college for different capacities, so it's really great to be able to help support you and the folks who are joining us today. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover 4 key things. I'm going to go at a rapid clip, take notes, take key ideas, and then at the end, we'll definitely have Q&A. So we'll have 20 to 30 minutes, hopefully, that we can get together. I can provide my comments, my thoughts, maybe coach a few people through a few twists and turns, and just provide some really good value for you. Number 1, it's never too late to get started, and you really have to start from where you are. And I'm going to go in depth on that. We're going to talk about a dangerous thinking trap that a lot of people just naturally fall into, but you won't be that person after today. We're also going to get clear on where you want to go. So I originally, in my coaching profession and career, started as a career transition coach back in 2008 to 2010. So that was really cool. So I'm going to go through a proprietary process that I put together that I help clients today get really clear on what they need to do in terms of a transition and where they need to go. And we're going to talk about 4 critical toxins that you just need to say goodbye to. And that will definitely help you get on the short list and hopefully get to the job offer. All right. In Japanese, we say kimasho, which means let's go. So who am I? Michael gave me a kind introduction, but I want to tell you a story that'll really give you an idea of where I've really come from and part of my journey, and I'll share a few other things as we go along. So I started a company called Samurai Innovation, but I think where that came from was back in 1996. You know, there I was in November of 1996. I was living in Edmonton. I was running a catering company at a downtown restaurant. Things were booming. Life was great until one random Monday morning when the provincial government laid off 70% of my customers. I was forced to pivot. I had to shut down half of my business. I was lucky to sell the other half to a client of mine. And then right after that, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer with 6 weeks to live. So needless to say, I had a lot of questions about life. But on the business front and career front, I was really questioning, why is it like that large brands and national companies seem to weather any storm? And that was a key question that emerged for me. And so over the next 20 years, I set out through a variety of career moves to answer that question. And I worked with the top brands out there to figure out what are their strategies, techniques that they use to weather storms, to make it through downturns, to really like come out of economic crises unaffected. And so what I do now is I help clients overcome 3 core challenges that every business has, and so that they can create a high impact and sustainable business. And my reason is that I never want my clients to have to make an aggressive pivot like I did back then. And that's what we do at Samurai Innovation is we help you overcome 3 core challenges. And so we do it through leadership coaching, marketing development, and a few other things. So why are you here today? You're here because of 1 or 2 reasons. Either you are wanting to make a fresh start in your career, or you were forced into making a new start. Now, a fresh start is you're in a career, you're in a job, you're currently employed, and you know there's something different for you, and you want to make a different move. That's awesome. I congratulate you. Or maybe you've been forced into a start. The company shut down, you're a headcount reduction, or some other reason that you're now saying, hey, I'm free. I don't have any entanglements. I'm free in my career. I can go wherever I want to go. Would it surprise you to tell you that people that are trying to make a fresh start have a harder time than people who are forced into a new start? Because when you are trying to make a fresh start and you're still employed and you have work, you have a lot of constraints, self-initiated constraints that you've put on the table. You have an income, you have benefits, you have familiarity, tenure, experience, you know the commute to work, you know your coworkers for eons. And so that gives you a lot of comfort and familiarity, but it also becomes a constraint in making your next move. But if you don't have any of that, you're actually more open to new possibilities. And so for whether you're in the fresh or the forced start category, I celebrate that. I think it's awesome. And I'm going to give you some strategies and tactics today that you can go away and it will help your journey. All right. So it's never too late to get started. And before we get into that, I want to ask you, I'll tell you a scenario that I was a part of and which job would you have taken? So I was at the end of 2004. And I had worked in hospitality management for over 20 years. I did a short stint with the Fresani Group, did some retail, realized that was not for me. I enjoyed the business, enjoyed the company, but retail just wasn't going to be my long-term home, and that was fine. And I decided I want to be a police officer. So I applied to the Edmonton Police Service and went all the way through to the end of their hiring process, which was rigorous. And they just said, we don't have room for you. And so now I was forced to now do a new career search. And so after a couple months into the career search, we were ending up into January 2005. And by a Wednesday afternoon, I have 3 job offers. And it was awesome. And 2 of them were in hospitality management. And 1 of them was in industrial sales, selling to the hospitality industry. And I thought, this is great. And I had a 4th interview lined up on a Friday afternoon at 3:15. And I thought, I better go because I hate when people blow off interviews for me. So I'm going to go. I went, I met the people. They were great people. There was something intriguing. And by a week later, I had 4 job offers. And the jobs were paying anywhere from $32,000 a year to $100,000 a year. And at this point, knowing what you know, which job would you have taken? And we'll come back and we'll check in the chat later and we can talk about it later. But it's important for you to just ask that question right now. Which one would you have taken? Given if you were Shane Fielder at that time, which one? Well, guess what? I took the $32,000 job, the lowest paying job, but I had a bunch of reasons. And the reasons I took it we're going to get into it. But one of the reasons was I wanted out of the hospitality industry because in that business, you're always working when everyone else is playing. And I wanted to have a different trajectory from my personal life, my family life. And so I decided that I would take a job in a different industry that gave me banker's hours, structured 9 to 5-ish kind of hours. I had my own office. Like there was all these kind of things that were really cool. And I took a job that was only going to be a 1 to 2 year horizon. And I knew that I could succeed in that job because all my transferable skills worked. And so that's what I did. Well, guess what? That turned into a 14-year career. And so I can get into that a little bit more for you later. So let's start with forgetting the past for now. So for now, for the next half an hour, 45 minutes, let's just forget where you worked. Let's forget your title on your business card. Let's forget the money you made. Let's forget the people you worked with. And let's just pretend like you're walking into the workforce today for the very first time. And what I want you to do is let go of what I call yesterday's value. Yesterday, you worked somewhere. Yesterday, you had a title. You had a resume with set number of experience, or you're just coming out of school and you have no experience. That's fine too. But you do have life experience. And regardless of the paychecks, the experience, the business card title, whatever it is, you're starting fresh tomorrow with a new potential prospective employer. And the reason why I say let go of yesterday's value is because the value that you created yesterday could be greater or less today or tomorrow. There could be a situation where you're like me and you take a very low paying job. I mean, that job was way lower than what I had been earning before, but guess what? It was a vehicle to get somewhere else, and there was a lot of value to that. It ended up being a long-term vehicle. So you're going to make decisions in your next career move based on a lot of variety and a lot of variables. And I'm going to help you clarify some of those today. Now, flexibility and confidence is value proposition. Your flexibility, your ability to be flexible with where you're going to go in your next move, plus the confidence that what's brought you to today will take you there tomorrow is massive value. And a lot of people don't think about this and they don't value this. So I want you to start thinking about if you can be flexible in your next career move. Maybe you might have to move across the country. I was one of the people that said I would never move to Calgary. Never in my life did I ever think Calgary would be home. Well, 11 years ago, that happened, right? Here I am. So Calgary's home. I love it. And so I had to eat a lot of crow in the past, but that's a different story. But again, so maybe you have flexibility in geography and you can make a move. Maybe you have flexibility that you're not stuck in a certain company or industry. Maybe you can transfer industries. So if you have that flexibility, but then you have the confidence to know that we're going to talk about some assets and value that you're going to create, that will be value and very attractive value that you can create and deliver to your next employer. The dangerous thinking trap that I was telling you about earlier is concrete thinking. And concrete thinking is really prevalent today. It's very absolute style thinking. A lot of people get into concrete thinking because they think that there's one way to do something. Or if something's happening to a small group of people or one person, it's happening to everybody. And so if everybody, there's people over here that just got laid off, well, everyone's going to get laid off. Well, that's not the case. So I want to illustrate to you how you can get out of the trap of concrete thinking. So there's always 3 types of people in a lot of scenarios. And so today there's definitely impacted folks. Some of you here were caused a forced start. You were put into a forced start, right? There's definitely people that are in the health arena. There's people that are impacted by COVID and things like that. And, definitely my heart goes out to those people and I pray and I want to support those folks. And so, but we know that there's a certain portion of people that are impacted, and the media tells a true story in some cases, and sometimes they don't. But then there's 2/3 of this other group of people out there. So let's go find out who are they. Well, there's another group of people out there that are thriving. If you work in the grocery industry, you're thriving. If you work in transportation and logistics, you're thriving. If you're working in medical and in certain frontline medical areas, you're thriving. And now the challenge is that people are thriving in today's situation and environment. They're a little bit stressed out. They're working a lot of overtime and they're in excessive demand. And so there's a cost to that thriving, but there are people that are thriving. There's also people that are steady. There's people that work for government or different institutions. They're vital, critical services. They're needed. And so those people are employed and they're working and they're helping society, get the wheels turning again in society. And that's cool. But there's also people that are well capitalized and they're waiting for opportunities. And so right now, I want you to start thinking about these three different areas. And whether you fit into one of these three areas is important to understand. But guess what? The future employer that's going to hire you, your prospects, a contract, whatever's going to come down the road for you, will be in these, will be in these last bottom two areas. You're going to go to work or have a contract materialize with somebody that's thriving and says, I need to bring extra help on. One of my clients runs a local business. And before getting into this whole situation, we were talking, she said, I'm going to have to make some pivots and things like that. And guess what? The pivots that she made, now the new problem is I need to bring in some part-time staff right now. And I need to think about what's our structure going to be for the next 2 to 3 months. And then what is it going to look like 6 months down the road? And so we've been having those conversations. So she's definitely thriving in a way that she didn't think was possible. So maybe you might be part of her part-time or scale up plan to add on some additional resources. I have friends that are well capitalized. I met a client at the grocery store a few weeks ago, and we were just talking about their plans. They run a real estate company. They sold a bunch of holdings late last year because they were looking at the fact that they thought that the United States would be in a recession by the third to fourth quarter of 2020. Well, now that's been expedited, but they sold a bunch of their holdings out so they could have cash. And they're going to use that cash to go buy different properties. And they created a whole list of properties that they want to buy. And now they're just waiting for those properties to become available. Likewise, I know other employers right now that they're growing. And I know a few people that have businesses that really flourish in a downturn. And so I'm thinking about one client group right now, and they do a lot of technology, internet cost savings, things like that. Their proposals collect dust in good times. It takes them forever to get in front of the right decision makers. But guess what? Their phone's been ringing off the hook in the last 6 weeks because people are saying, hey, if you can save us $40,000 or $50,000 on our internet charges or our telephone costs or whatever, can we talk? And so again, now they're looking and saying, hey, Shane, who do you know that would be a good chief operating officer to come in and help us? We need another accountant. We need some technical people because we think there's some opportunities that we definitely want to take some contracts on. And they're well capitalized and they're looking for the right people. And there's other people that I've talked to that have said, now is the time that I know there's going to be some new talent available. And I want to be one of the employers in the market that's going to go and attract the best talent for the best dollars so that I can scale my business. So the dangerous trap is thinking that it's all really bad and whatever the news in CNN or CBC or whatever you're reading or listening to is telling you, don't buy it. There's a whole different reality out there. You just have to put your mind on it and get focused to it. So what I want you to start thinking about is when you're looking at the opportunities that you're looking for is to filter it starting by industry and ask yourself which industries are thriving today and which ones are well capitalized, well poised, steady industries. Now, every industry is going to have had some outlier data in the last few months because we're living in such an aggressively shifting time. And so, but if you can go back the last 6 months, the year or 2 years and say, how stable was that industry? That may be a clue of where you want to shift to next. Then you're going to want to look at the region. Some regions are doing better than other regions. So as we talked about a few minutes ago, you may contemplate a career move to a different region. You might move across Canada. You might move to the United States. Who knows? So again, is there a region that will work for you? And then track it down to the company level and ask which companies are thriving, which ones are steady, which ones are well capitalized, which ones do I think would be a solid bet that I would maybe want to transition into over the next 2 to 3 years. And there's opportunities out there. Transferable assets and value. So you've heard a lot of people talk about transferable skills, which is great, but you have transferable assets. Go back through what you've done in the past and look for all the assets that you've created. If you manufactured a process, created a process, wrote policy, were able to whittle down a budget and create cost savings, or you were able to come in and launch a human resources initiative and onboard 500 employees for, company expansion, go back and think about all the times that you created something that was substantial that was back then considered an asset to the organization. Could you not replicate that for another business, another organization? The answer is yes. Yes, you could. But a lot of times we just sit there and say, well, I have skills. I have a typing speed. Maybe I'm good with people. Maybe I'm not good with people. Yeah, I can do a budget. I can't do a budget. I'm a good writer, whatever. And we get locked into skills versus assets. So now when you think about this list of creating assets, and you can then show up and have a conversation with a future employer and say, well, you know what? Even though I don't work in the XYZ industry, when I was in the ABC industry, I was able to really do budget optimization. And here's my process that I go through to optimize a budget. And I think if I applied that same process to the ABC industry and worked with you, I think I could bring a 10% cost savings on annual operating expenses. You're going to have somebody listening to you. You're going to have them at the edge of their chair saying, tell me more about that. How do you think you can do that? And they might debate with you and say, well, you don't know our industry and things like that. That's okay. You've started a conversation. You've started a value-based conversation. And then it's up to you, based on your ingenuity, your creativity, and your ideas, to carry that conversation to the next level to say, hey, maybe how do we talk about me joining you? So hopefully that's making sense so far. Let's move into, how do you get some clarity around where you should go? This is the big question. It's $1 million question everyone's saying is, where should I go next, Shane? How do I get there? What does it look like? Let's answer some of that today. So I'm going to give you a process. It does have a homework assignment component. I'll give you the template. I want you to work on this. You might nail it in one sitting. It might take 5 or 6 cups of coffee over a few days to nail it. That's okay. So your past has served you well. Thank your past. Wherever you worked, whatever the job was, the industry, just thank it. Take a moment, have some internal gratitude and say, even though I worked for the most horrible manager, there was something that served me there. Even though I worked with a company that changed all their policies and it didn't work for anymore, but I can look at that and say that served me. I saw how companies can turn on a dime and change their policies or change their vision, and that served me. That's all stuff that is going to go into the asset category that we want to take forward. So what are the 2 pathways to finding out your career move sweet spot? Okay, so this is a process that I developed because I've gone through all sorts of assessment stuff, and we've done the Myers-Briggs and all these different things, and those are all great, but we want to get you some clarity today to give you an idea of where you maybe are not looking and how do you get there. Does that sound fine? Okay. Let's move to, just got to make sure I manage the slide deck here correctly. Okay, so the first thing is grab your sheet of paper and write at the top, it would be cool too. It would be cool too. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line down the center of the sheet. And on the left-hand side, you're going to have your it would be cool to statements. So it would be cool to work in a job that I have my own office because I'm tired of cubicle land. It would be cool to work in a place where I could work in a hoteling situation. It would be cool to work for a company that offers me 30 to 40% travel opportunities because I love to travel, and that would be cool. It would be cool to work with a team of 300 people because I've only been working in small teams of 25 or 30 people. It would be cool to work only with a small team because I'm tired of working with 500 to 1,000 people. It would be cool to be in a position that would offer me vertical advancement within the next 6 to 10 months. Great. It would be cool to be in a position that would allow me to use 30 to 40% of my skills that were based in my degree that I haven't been utilizing in my last couple of roles. That would be cool. And so write down anything and everything that you think would be cool to take into your next career move. So the next question then is, once you have that written down, and I want you to try and get at least 30 to 40 statements, just really work it through. Usually after the first 12 or 15, it gets tough, but it's usually between kind of statement 25 to 40 is where some real gems start emerging. And if you find this hard to do, if you don't like journaling and this isn't your jam, then what I want you to do is have a friend do this and just have your friend say, Shane, what would be cool to do? Shane, it would be cool to do what? And I would say, oh yeah, work in a place I have my own office. Okay, what else would be cool to do? And just have them ask you what else would be cool to do. And that will help you get the list of statements. On the right-hand column, we want you to categorize it by who is served. And it's going to really come down to 2 simple things. It's going to be you or them. You, the company or the organization, the manager, the supervisor, we call that them. So you and them. And then we go down and say, well, it would be cool to have a corner office. Who does that serve? It serves you. It would be cool to work with teams of 500 people. Well, that would serve them. It would be cool to work in a place where I could use 30 to 40% of my degree skills in a relevant way, in a relevant work context. Well, that would serve them. It would serve you too, but it would more, if you're able to take skills that you've learned and earned and apply it in the work context, that creates value for them. So that's what I want you to do. The next exercise is, I never want to do blank, or I never want to do blank again. Because we all have things that we've done in our career that we're like, we never want to do that again. I know one guy that never wanted to work with frontline staff. And he said his strategy was to just promote himself as far away from the frontline staff. And finally, at the end of the day, he became the president of a company. And I said to him, so how's that working for you? He goes, well, I don't run frontline staff anymore. And that was like something he didn't enjoy it. He loved more the strategy, the policy making, things like that. That was fine. That was what was important to him. There's no wrong answer to any of this. We need to get to a point of clarity. So again, we're going to write on the sheet of paper the statement, I never want to do. Now, I never want to do could be things you've never done, but never want to do, right? I don't want to do brain surgery. So I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to work as a respiratory therapist. So I could say, I never want to work in the healthcare industry. I never, and maybe in a different way I could, but I don't want to work in that industry. Sorry. So these can be things that you never want to do, or these are things you never want to do again. So maybe you worked in a job where you did a lot of compliance filing and you just filed paperwork after paperwork for hours a day. You say, I never want to do filing again. Great, put it on the list. I never want to have to work in a job where I have to do annual budgets and forecasts. Great, put that on the list, right? Have your list. Again, the same thing. If this is a struggle for you, have somebody challenge you and say, so Kim, what do you never want to do again? Well, I don't want to do filing. Kim, what else do you not want to do? Kim, what else do you not want to do? What else do you not want to do again? And then that way you can get through and be clear on all the things that you've done and that you want to move away from. Now, what you want to do is rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is pure passion. Like you would pay them to get to go to work and do that job. 10 is never again. Like you won't do it. Now, why is this important? Shane, how am I going to get passion out of the things that I never want to do again? Because in your list, we're then going to go through and rate it. By rating it, you're going to say, well, I never want to be a toll booth or parking booth operator. Maybe an 8. Okay, great. I never want to do filing again. 5. I never want to do payroll and time card keeping again. 10. Like that's just never again, right? And you're going to understand that. And so what we want to do then is we're going to rank it here in a minute so we can get to what I call your sweet spot. So hopefully we're keeping pace. If you want to give a thumbs up, that's great. And then we'll get to some really good Q&A right away. So how do we collaborate this? How do we put it all together? Okay, so we start with all your cool things, the list of cool things. And as I said before, sort it between you and them. So if you did it on paper, put it into like a spreadsheet or Microsoft Word and then sort it between all the you and them statements. And that's very, very important so that out of that, you can start deriving value. And so we're going to get to that in just 1 minute, because here's something that's important. Reasons anchor results. Reasons anchor results. And a lot of people don't go in the right direction because they don't have a good enough reason. Well, I took the job because I needed a paycheck. That might be true, but it's not the best reason for you or the employer. But if you took the job because you were so excited, I was so excited to get out of the hospitality hours. I loved the business. I loved running facilities with 15 to 20,000 people a day coming through my facility. And that was really cool. And it was exciting and it was energetic, but I didn't like work until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to do that. And so I thought it was really cool when I could go into real estate and parking management and work from like 8:30 in the morning till about 5. That was like, this was incredible. Like I get to go to work when the sun's up and go home and it's still up. So that's really cool. So I had reasons. So what are your reasons? What are your reasons? Now, everything that you've ranked that's a reason for you. That's a reason to go to work for that company or organization or stay in that industry or move to a different industry. All the reasons for them is where your value comes from. We're going to talk about how to build your value in a few minutes. Again, if you're in front of an employer a prospective employer, and you can say, look, I want to work for you. And do you know what? I have 8 reasons why I want to work for you. Do you think you're not going to you're going to stand out from all the other 200 people that have submitted their resume? Because there's a lot of people that right now are just saying, I just want a job. Yeah, and I want a job, and I want it at the pay that I used to get paid 5 years ago. Right? And so that's where at the start of today, we talked about just let go of the past for a while. Let's start with today. And so let's move forward. And if you can sit in front of the employer and say, here's 8 reasons or 6 reasons or 4 really good reasons why I want to come work for you. Because I think my skill set or my expertise and my knowledge or the processes that I can use can be a very good value to you and your organization. You're going to enter into a deeper conversation and get closer to an employment offer. The never scale. What will you settle for? What are you prepared to settle for? Now, I don't believe in motivational mumbo jumbo that says, oh, never settle for anything. Just live your life and live your passion. It's not reality. It's not reality. I'll never forget years ago, I was at a career workshop, and it was one of those weekends where people went in, and you went in on a Friday night and you did a battery of tests, and you did all this stuff like how many times can you tap your pencil on the page, and how well do you write perfect circles, and you did Myers-Briggs, and you did all this stuff. And then out over the course of the weekend, by Sunday afternoon, they were telling you like what job you should do and what the knock code is and all this kind of good stuff. Well, there was a really good time, and one of the facilitators, she asked the group, and there was about 150 people at this workshop, and she asked, how many of you today would like to work and earn $80,000 a year working 30 hours a week? And about 95% of the room's hands went up. So then she clarified and she said, okay, how many of you would like to earn your $80,000 in 30 hours a week working in an isolated situation? Well, a few more hands went down. How many of you would like to work in that situation in a customer service role? Then more hands went down. How many of you would like to go to work every day for your $80,000 and know that 4 out of 5 customers hate your guts? More hands went down. Well, within about 10 minutes, we had the room pared down to about 10 hands. 10 hands were still in the air saying, all that criteria sounds good for me. What's the job? And she said, it's a toll booth operator, working in a toll booth, knowing that you don't have any good customer service. People hate you. They hate paying for tolls, and they're whizzing by you, and you're pretty much isolated. And when we asked those 10 people, why would you do it? And they said, well, that $80,000, I could take 3 or 4 months off and pay all my living expenses and travel. And so those reasons started coming back. They started having a reason as to why they would do that. And some people said, I'd do it for a year, save my money, and then go get a different job. Go get a $50,000 a year job because that's what I want to do. Okay, great. That's cool. And so again, going back to those reasons, they're going to anchor the results. They're going to get you closer to a better outcome that's more appropriate for you. So the question is, what would you settle for? And I don't want you to think in terms of settlement. I want you to think in terms of concession. So take your items and rank them and then sort it. Start at all the number 1s at the top and move all the way to the 10s at the bottom. Anything that is in the 1 to 4 category are things that you should really shoot for and strive for and make sure that is part of the conversation. So if you're super passionate about filing or budgeting process or innovation or product creation, then you want to make sure that that comes up in the conversation. If you got a lot of 5 to 7 stuff that's like, well, I don't mind doing the filing, I don't mind doing the bookkeeping, or, I can do some clerical stuff as long as it's 5 to 10 hours a week, keep it in check. That's a 5 to a 7 kind of item. And then your 8 to 10s, your 8s and 9s are things that you really don't want to do anymore. But if you had to do it because you were the backup person, or you had to do payroll once or twice a year when John or Sheila, who does it every day, goes on vacation and you were the backup, that's okay. And then just know, are there any 10s on the list that would be a showstopper? Is there a 10 on the list that you would say, you know what, Mr. or Mrs. Future Employer, I can't do that. I just won't do that anymore. And you turn down the offer. That's okay. It's your life. It's your career. You get to choose. So hopefully that's making sense. Put some questions in the chat and we can come back to that after. Let's move on to the 4 critical toxins that you need to get out of your system before you start talking to people. And by doing this, it'll help improve your communication, and it'll help you get on the short list. So the first one is criticism. There's a lot of people that will criticize their former employer, their former manager, supervisor, leader, and that's just not going to be productive for you. So we got to get rid of any area of criticism. I'm going to show you how to make these productive in a moment. Comparison. Comparison is typically a mindset game. It's an inner game, because typically you're going to compare you against them. You and the other 200 people that submitted an application. You and the other 50 geologists that you know that are all looking for the same 5 jobs. Don't do that. You got to get internal. You got to get clear on what your value is. What are your value assets? What's your value contribution? And so if you're going to compare to anybody, compare to yourself. The next one is competition. Competition is real. We have marketplaces for a reason. We have competition within organizations for different things, but that doesn't need to stop you from making a good career move. Remember at the beginning, I said that the people that are trying to make a fresh start sometimes have a tougher constraint. Yeah, because you're thinking about the competition of leaving the safety of what you know today to go over to something that's not guaranteed or not known. And you're thinking about, well, who are all the people over there and how is it going to be? That's competition. Complaining. I shouldn't need to say anything more than this, but there are people, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people in my career that'll sit across the table, and with a good couple questions, they're telling me all their complaints about, well, you know, the company went to pot, the company went to hell in a handbasket. I was doing good until my leader retired, and then, man, the new guy that came in, he was 10 years younger than me, and he was a jerk, and I couldn't work in that environment. And then I've been in sessions where it was like the guy just started complaining for 5 or 6 minutes. It's like, I don't want that person on my staff. Forget it. So how do we turn this around? If you find yourself in a position where you're criticizing, and I have been where you've been, I have been fired from a job, I have lost a job. And so I can tell you that it's really easy to go home with some anger, and it's easy to criticize. Or the company had to downsize because the strategy was the wrong strategy, or something in the marketplace shifted. And we can criticize leadership, we can criticize government all we want, but you know, one of the things is, did you vote for government? Like in the last election, did you actually vote? And a lot of people say, no, I don't vote, but yet they're going to criticize. So let's shift that to commendation. How do we commend things? You know, how can you say, hey, I left that company and things were really good and things were awesome. And, you know, unfortunately, the company changed their policies and their procedures. And that really kind of made me realize that that wasn't the place I wanted to be, because I'm an innovative kind of guy and I like to be in places where I can be creative and I can grow. And now I'm looking for that. I'm not a, you know, production assembly line person. And so I just needed to make a change for that. And, you know, I wish the company the best, but I need something that's better for me. How can you commend that? Hey, you know what? I worked with a really tough manager in the past. He or she was really good. They were really fair. And there's really no need that I would criticize them. I commend them because they were always good to me in these areas. And they showed me how I want to anchor my leadership, or how I want to vary my leadership from them. That's commending. When you're working on comparison, I want to challenge you today to find at least 2 to 3 things about you and your ability as a professional to create unique value for your next employer or your next contract. So where can you create unique value that somebody else cannot? How can you walk in and say, you know what? I've got 3 good ideas about how I would change the marketing in your business. Or would you allow me 5 minutes to set out my 90-day plan? Let me tell you about, if I was to work for you starting May 1st, what my first 90 days in the job would be and what my plan would be to come in and add value. You're going to get people say, yes, by all means, tell me. And you're going to be moving the conversation to a different point, one that you can control and influence. You may not get the job, but I guarantee you, if you say something like that, where you're focused on sharing unique value, you can say, my research, the things I've been looking at about the industry and where your company's going, I see an opportunity over here. I see an opportunity over there. Can we explore that? Because I have a couple questions about how your company's getting ready to deal with those opportunities. All valid questions that create unique value. Instead of competing, look at the ways that you can create value. So again, if you're sitting there and they're saying, well, it's a very competitive marketplace that our industry is in, say, yeah, I realize that. But how do we create a market of one? what are the unique things that the company or the organization does that the other ones don't? And then as an employee, as a professional going into that role, again, that your unique value that you created before, how do you create tangible value? Guess what? If you're creating tangible value and you're walking in with a 90 or 100-day plan, you're way further ahead than somebody that's saying, just give me a job, like, and give me a job at really premium pay. I'm not willing to sacrifice anything. You can move forward and say, hey, I'd love to work here. And here's what I do in the first 100 days. And I'm willing to be flexible on my salary. And what other ways could we look at some compensation, bonus compensation or percentage compensation, should I deliver on the value that I create? All great conversations that can be had. Now, complaining, if you find yourself in a real long-term pattern of complaining, then at that point, I would challenge you and I would work with you to help you come up with owning it. You got to own the situation. You got to own the fact that you worked somewhere, you were part of a team, you were part of something was massively successful. Own that. Don't take more credit than you should, but own your part of the recipe. If you work somewhere and something failed and it failed because you made a mistake or your team made a mistake or the company made a wrong turn and things just went south, own it and say, yeah, that was heartbreaking to work at that company and we were doing really well and we brought that product to market and it bombed. It failed. But you know what? What I learned from that is we should have stopped a few points earlier, or we should have ran more focus groups or test groups. We should have done something different. And I've now learned that instead of like throwing the budget full in, I test a percentage of the budget. And I wouldn't make that mistake on your time and your dime. Again, people really love that. They're looking for people that are more accountable, more transparent, and have a higher level of ownership. So that's the core teaching that I have for you today that's hopefully got your minds moving in a positive direction. A little gift that I have for you is you can go to our site at samuraiinnovation.com, scroll about halfway down. We have a leadership assessment tool. Because at the end of the day, you fall into one or two categories. You're either a producer or you're a leader. What is a producer? A producer is a professional or somebody that's on staff that doesn't really have a formal supervisory title or leadership or management title, but they are essential to the business welfare, the success of the business. And all business and organizations need competent producers to come in and really produce and innovate and create. So that might be you. Or you might have a formal leadership role. And so that's totally cool too. So if you're in a formal leadership role, we need to know what stage of leadership are you at. And you're going to be part of one of three stages of leadership. And so that stage of leadership is important to know. So when you go in there, I have a diagnostic that you can fill out. And at the end, you just drop in your name and email. And then I have some customized videos that will help you figure out exactly how do you flourish in that next stage of leadership and how do you grow that next stage of leadership. So that's our gift to you today, and thank you for having us out. And why don't we turn it over to time for Q&A?
Yeah, so if you do have a question, then definitely put it into that chat box there, and then we can start fielding those questions. But Shane, thank you so much. That was awesome. I really liked how you got us to change that thinking. I mean, it's really easy for us to get out there, to listen to the news, to look at all the stuff that's on the internet and say, things are really bad out there. But I like how you got to get us to shift the focus to really look for those opportunities, look for the positives, because there's definitely lots out there. So, like I said, let's ask some questions here. We got one that's saying, how many sessions do we need to be successfully coached by you for the job market, and how much do we need to invest? I mean, maybe that's something that you guys want to talk about later on, or I mean, you can definitely address that now if you like.
Yeah, for anyone that would ever want to work with me or anything like that, you can go to our site and then there's a Work with Shane tab. Just click on the menu bar, follow that to the bottom of the page. There's clear instructions of how you and I can connect with each other and work together and problem solved.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, also definitely check out those resources that are on his website. That would be an excellent place to start in your kind of self-assessment. Now, I got a question for you, Shane. I really liked what you were saying about, like, we get locked into skills rather than assets, right? So thinking about things like, I'm good at Microsoft Word, I work well in teams, I've got great customer service, that kind of thing. But what other kinds of assets have you seen people leverage in their job search?
So I'll tell you an asset that I leveraged that was really awesome. I didn't get the job, but I got right to the end. And many years ago, when I was back in that career search, I leveraged the asset of knowledge, grassroots knowledge, surveying. And so if you've ever eaten at the restaurant Eastside Mario's, I was interviewing with that company to be the regional manager for Alberta. And I was looking at it, it was an exciting opportunity. And I read nothing but great stuff, but I wasn't reading anything really bad about the organization or the people. And I know that there's challenges in every business. And so what I did, and this was back in November, back in Edmonton, and it was cold and snowing, I created a quick survey. I parked in front of each of their restaurants. I went to 4 different restaurants. And as guests were coming out of the restaurant, I was in a full suit and I would walk up to the guests saying, "Hi, I'm Shane Fielder. I'm doing some market research for Eastside Mario's. And how was your guest experience tonight? How was the food? How was the service?" And it was like really quick. And then I collated that. And then I prepared a report for the vice president that I was interviewing with. And he was blown away. He said, "In 25 years in this business, I've never seen anybody do this." Now, the offer wasn't the right offer. So I decided not that I didn't want to work there. But that whole process was really stimulating and it was really good. And it got us into some pretty dynamic conversations. And he, we went from tell me about your skills and your experience. He has all that on the resume. We went to, so based on your survey and based on the talking to the guests and seeing what they were doing, how would you change our kitchen challenge? And then he started telling me the challenges. And then at that point, I was able to contribute value based on my abilities and my experience to say, well, in the kitchen, have you thought about this, this, and this? No. Front of house, how are you approaching training and things like that? So I think you have a lot of tools today that you can go in and actually demonstrate competency. Do you have a portfolio? Do you have a portfolio where you can say, here's a sample of, a report that I produced, or here, and sometimes you can and cannot because of company non-disclosure agreements and things like that. Could you produce a sample for a future employer? Right? So there's a lot of ways that you can walk in with a physical or tangible asset or email the recruiter and say, hey, here's a link to my portfolio site, or here's a PDF of different things that I've worked on and here's different assets and different processes. I did this process and the budget saved 10%. That netted $1.2 million to the organization. I did this process. The result was this. You can have a simple 1-page sheet like that if you hand to somebody, they're going to make sure that the key decision maker is going to definitely look at that. And if that's on top of your resume and in the system and nobody else has that, guess what? You're much further ahead. So that's really, we could go on for a long time about how you turn knowledge and experience into assets.
And it's really about standing out, right? What can you do to show that you really can do the job that the rest of the crowd isn't doing? I mean, maybe they have the same skills, maybe they might even be able to do it better. But I mean, you're the one that's showing that you can do this, right? Maybe they're not doing it. So it is a lot about standing out. And then that's great. Looks like you do lots of research though, Shane. We got another question here. So when you go back to the "it would be cool too" statement, can the "who is served" category have both me and them as an option?
Yeah, say that again.
Yeah, so then when we're talking about that, it would be cool too, when you're doing that self-assessment. Then you also have the other side where it says "who is served" category. Right. Now, for the people who it serves, are you able to put me, like as yourself, as well as them?
Yeah. Yeah, so I always use you or them, but if you want to say me and them, that's totally fine. You got to get really clear that having a corner office probably serves you or me better than it does the company. I mean, there's some people that say, I don't care where my office is, as long as they're paying me well and I have interesting work and I'm part of a vibrant team, put me in the closet. I don't care. I'll go to work. And it's not a big criteria or feature for them. Whereas other people, it is. They need that status or they need a level of significance. So yeah, the more you can get clear on that, the more powerful you'll be able to then say, okay, here's all the things that I would like. And here's the things that I would need. And then again, when you match that up to the "I never want to do that again," it gets very clear what are needs and wants. Like, I need to go to work with a company that provides me up-to-date hardware, the best hardware that I can do the best work. I don't want to work with 5-year-old hardware. You need to know that going in. You need to ask a prospective employer, hey, what version of Microsoft Windows are we running? What version of the equipment are we on? How new is the equipment in the facility? Those are the kinds of questions you need to get clear on, because if you've always worked with companies that had outdated stuff and you're tired of that, you need to know that going into the next conversation.
Yeah, and I've definitely worked with companies that have outdated technology, and it's not fun going backwards with technology. So
No.
we got another question here. Can you please elaborate more about asset and how it will help you in your next job?
Yeah, so people want to have value contributors in their organization. So whether you're a producer and you're in a single role and you're doing great work and you don't really have to supervise and manage people, the company needs you to show up and produce value. And so you have to have assets that can be part of that value contribution. And so it could be the way you look at a process. It could be the way you create or innovate. It could be the way you code, right? I know some guys that they code and they take pride on creating lean architecture coding. So they can go in and say, well, the value I offer is my code is always lean. It's lean, it's light, it's packageable, and you're never gonna have to check my code or spend hours, troubleshooting my code. That's an asset, because you might be put on a troubleshooting team or something like that. So again, there's a whole host of that. You just got to start thinking about moving from skills, like I can type or I can code, to how do you type? How do you code? How do you manage people? How do you fire up a team? How do you walk into a struggling organization and turn it around? And what's going to be the way to do it? And raw inspirational posters on the wall is not going to meet the need. You're going to have a more concrete plan and an asset and a way you're going to do that.
And the whole idea behind it as well is to think, if you've done it in the past at another job, then you can do it again in the future at this job. And that's what you're trying to communicate. Isn't that right, Shane?
Yeah, but I'd also encourage you to think that because you did it in the past, don't be locked into that was the way that it has to be done going forward. Say, hey, I worked for 3 different employers and here's how they did their budgets. And I'm pretty like we can either do a rolling forecast, we can do fixed forecasts, we can do whatever. How do you guys do that here? Guess what? By just saying that, you've put an asset on the table where the future employer would say, we've never done rolling forecasting. How did that work for you? Did you like it? And you can say, yeah, you know what? There's parts of it I really liked because we never had that one big annual crunch time. But there's parts of it that it did take a lot of extra work each month that I would have rather been investing into R&D or whatever part of the business I work in. So now you're offering a much more creative conversation.
So it really is kind of taking that consultant's role rather than a job seeker role and finding what those problems are and being able to answer them with the skills and your experience that you've had. Is that correct?
Yeah, you want to be a detective. You want to say, from my experience looking from the outside in and understanding the industry, or if you're trying to shift into an industry that you've never been in before, you can say, you know what, I might not have a lot of experience in this particular industry, but what I do know in this type of business is here are some key principles that I would look to apply. And how do you value these 3 key principles? And so again, you're asking questions without pointing a finger or denigrating the way something's done. You're actually looking to add value.
Yeah, definitely. Now we've got one more question here. This is the last one I'll take. Lillian says, I find your concept very interesting, assets versus skills. So how do you transfer and or categorize hard and soft skills into assets, such as process?
That's a great question, Lillian. So again, what the question I would ask you is, what is the outcome of those skills? If you can type faster than somebody, what's the outcome of being a faster typist? If your code is lighter and more error-free in your coding and architecture, what's the value of that? If you can look at a set of books and assess the books and find 3 flaws that need to be rectified before the auditors come in and audit your books, what's the value of that to a potential employer? If you can take if you're a person that can gain consensus in an adversarial team, what's the value of having less wasteful meetings and having people who are more in agreement of the vision and the direction that you're affecting and that you're pushing? So what's the value of that? How do you transition those skills into, always ask, what is the outcome of my skills? And some of your skills may be obsolete, outdated. They might not be relevant to the current context, but if there's an outcome it can affect, that will provide value.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane. So I'm going to end it off with this. here's my question for you. And when you're kind of looking for a job, let's say back in the day, finish a sentence. I think it would be cool too. What came up for you?
Well, I think it would be cool to work with innovative companies. I've always wanted to. So back to my origin story, which was coming out of that whole situation. I made one key decision in my career that I was only going to work for industry leaders. And so I would tell employers, I would say, based on my research, you're in the top 3 companies in the industry. I don't want to settle for anything less. So, tell me how you see yourself being the industry leader in 3 to 5 years, because that's where I want to be. And that was cool to me. I wanted to work with people that had leading processes. They are good on innovation. I'm an innovator, so I'm not a maintenance manager. I do not do good in a job where I just got to keep the lights on and keep the wheels turning around. That's not my specialty. That's somebody else's. But I do good where I can walk in and turn a situation around, transform a process, transform a department. That's what I love to do. And so it would be cool if I can work in places like that.
Yeah, that's definitely cool. And I definitely think that you did help turn a couple people's job searches around today in the right direction. So Shane, last question is, how can people connect with you if they do have more questions?
I'm on LinkedIn, Shane Fielder. You can find me there, linkedin.ca/Shane Fielder. You can go to samuraiinnovation.com and I'm there. You can connect with me, contact info, contact form is there. You can learn more about me. I've got some really great resources that are free and available. So yeah, I'd love to connect with everyone. I had a few good people, Julio and a couple other ones connect with me previous to this. So yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, and definitely if you do connect with Shane on LinkedIn, let him know in that message when you do connect that you did check out his webinar. But thanks so much for coming in today, Shane. That was really great. Lots of great insight, lots of great information that'll really help us all in looking in what's our next steps in life or next steps in our career. But let me tell you, if you do need a little more help, then we are here with Career Connection at Bow Valley College to help you in those steps. If you do have questions about what's next in your career, maybe like you need help with your resumes, maybe you need help with interview, maybe just general job searching skills or getting some information about what's happening out there in the job market right now, because it can be a little crazy, then what you can do is check out our website at mycareerconnection.ca. And we are still having webinars every day for the next one more week. We got one more week left. We're almost at the end, everyone.
That's awesome.
But yeah, one more week. But what we do have these recordings up, including this one. We're going to be putting it up hopefully soon when I do get to that. But these recordings will be up so that you can check them out. They're going to be on our website at mycareerconnection.ca/events. And you could check out the replays as well as the one today. And you can also see the ones that we're going to be having next week. But I also want to put this date on your calendar, and that's May 6th. And that is Career Boost 2020. And we're getting together a group of speakers and community leaders as well who are going to do lots of talks throughout the day about different things in your career search, in your job search, to help you improve, as well as our keynote speaker, Todd Hirsch, who's going to be talking about kind of what we know about the economy right now. And who knows what that's going to be. As far as I know that there's still lineups at Costco. So that at least has not changed. But we're also going to have an employer's fair as well. There's going to be a handful of employers that are going to be there, and they're actually hiring right now. They're looking for people like you. So come out to that. It is going to be all online. It's going to be virtual. So check that out on our website as well as at mycareerconnection.ca. But we do have one more day this week, which means there's one more webinar. And that one is going to be an interesting one. Now, we've been talking over the past month about all things in the past, things in the present. And tomorrow, we're going to be looking into the future, getting our magic 8-ball out, shaking it, and seeing what's happening in the future. So we've got Susie Coe, and she is the leader of talent acquisition at ATB. And she's going to talk about what recruitment might look like after everything is done and what that new normal is. So she'll expand a little bit more kind of about what Shane was talking about today. And she's going to tell you about some of those skills and assets that you can maybe use for tomorrow in recruitment. But hey, Shane, thank you so much for joining us today. That was amazing. We really appreciate that you were able to come out, check out Shane's stuff at samuraiinnovation.com. My name's Michael Manzano. I'm with Career Connection at Bow Valley College. And everyone, just remember to stay safe, stay strong, because we're going to get through this all together. Thanks for coming, everyone. You take care.
Awesome, guys. Thanks.